Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into the silk-lined, spice-scented world of Mughal court life. Specifically, the daily routine of a Mughal emperor. Imagine gold-threaded cushions, fountains whispering in marble courtyards, and enough rose water to hydrate an entire garden. You're about to spend a day, not just any day, but a full minute-by-minute drift, living as the most pampered, occasionally grumpy ruler of early modern India. Spoiler. You probably won't survive this level of indulgence unless you're at least 30% made of cardamom. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first hints of dawn seep in like a whisper through finely carved jolly screens. You lie beneath a towering canopy of white muslin, so sheer it almost floats. Outside, pigeons coo softly, and somewhere, a gardener is already brushing fallen neem leaves into tiny piles. You stir reluctantly as a team of attendants enters your sleeping chamber. Silently, reverently, with a kind of choreography that's been rehearsed since before you were born. One holds a copper basin of warm water infused with rose petals. Another carries an embroidered towel scented faintly with saffron and vetiver. A third begins chanting a series of praises, titles upon titles, each more exaggerated than the last, declaring your supreme wisdom before your eyes are even fully open. You groan softly. This again. You sit up slowly, the silk sheets slipping down. The marble floors cool underfoot, and your first real sensation of the day is a little jolt of chill as you rise. You're still in a state somewhere between dream and duty. Welcome to the life of a Mughal emperor. 1/3 theater, 1/3 ceremony, 1/3 digestive challenges. Your bedchamber is cavernous yet intimate, decorated with painted niches that hold incense jars, tiny bird cages, and a delicate hourglass that was, allegedly, a gift from a Portuguese missionary. The air smells like sandalwood smoke, and the faint, lingering warmth of perfumed oil lamps that burned low into the night. One of your more senior attendants presents a mirror framed in ivory. You peer into it. Puffy eyes, decent beard, slightly smug expression. Yes, that's you. Someone else is already brushing your hair with a fine-toothed comb, dipping it in perfumed oil made from crushed jasmine and a few drops of rare Himalayan herb. Historians still argue whether Mughal emperors truly styled their hair daily or left it to fate. Yours looks regal enough for breakfast, at least. A servant kneels with your morning robe, indigo and lined with Kashmiri embroidery. You slip into it like you're wrapping yourself in authority. It's soft, but heavy, the fabric speaking the language of wealth in a whisper. Outside, conch shells and bells signal the formal arrival of dawn prayers. A muezzin's voice floats up from the private mosque across the palace grounds. You pad slowly toward your ablution chamber. The walls are lined with blue and white tiles that gleam faintly in the morning light. Here you begin your first ritual cleansing of the day. Hands, mouth, face, nostrils, feet. In that order, with warm water poured from silver ewers. You hum softly, a line from last night's poetry still tangled in your thoughts. Something about a jasmine breeze and betrayal. Typical court verse. Once clean, you kneel on a prayer rug so intricately woven it probably took a year to finish. As you begin your Fajr prayers, you feel the stretch in your shoulders and the cool air on your neck. Behind you, attendants withdraw silently. This is one of the only times in your day you'll be truly alone. The prayer brings you back to center, or at least closer to it, because very soon, you'll be expected to rule over an empire larger than all of Western Europe, manage egos the size of elephants, and pretend that today's poetry contest is really very interesting. After prayer, a eunuch arrives carrying a carved sandalwood box. Inside, a selection of morning attars, natural perfumes made from crushed flowers and rare resins. You pick one called Bahar, meaning spring. It's a blend of rose, vetiver, and a secret ingredient only your personal perfumer knows. One drop on each wrist, one behind each ear. There's a long-standing theory that emperors use scent not just to smell good, but to maintain an aura, something invisible, soft, and unmistakably powerful. Outside your chamber, the sounds of the palace are waking up. A cook argues with a fishmonger over the size of today's trout. A parrot shrieks a half-remembered insult from the last week's poetry night. A bureaucrat clears his throat dramatically in the courtyard, hoping to catch your attention. Not yet, you think. Not until breakfast. But before you even leave your room, there's one more morning ritual. The receiving of the namaskar. This is a ceremonial greeting from the palace guards, the household staff, and any nobles camped outside your door, hoping to be noticed. They line the hall in 2 neat rows, hands clasped, eyes respectfully lowered. You step out in your indigo robe, and they bow like wheat before the monsoon. You nod, barely. A gesture refined through decades of inherited aloofness. The kind that says, "Yes, I see you. No, I do not have time for your petitions about goat taxes." A young page approaches with a tray of dried fruits. Figs, apricots, dates, almonds. You take a fig and chew it slowly as you walk toward the breakfast pavilion, the scent of food. Actual food, already wafting toward you. But that's for the next minute, the next ritual, the next delicious chapter. You walk slowly toward the breakfast pavilion, a long corridor of light and shadow opening before you. The rising sun filters through hanging silk screens, throwing peach-colored rectangles across the polished floor. Your slippers whisper against the marble, and your robe trails behind you like a cloud, too dignified to rain. At the end of the corridor, the breakfast pavilion waits like a stage set for one. Pillars of red sandstone frame the open-air alcove, with white muslin curtains fluttering lazily in the morning breeze. A small marble fountain babbles at the center. Not so much for cooling as for sound design, it masks the clinks of silver and ceramic, and makes your meal feel important. Regal. Hydrated. Your breakfast table, low inlaid with lapis and mother of pearl, sits surrounded by velvet cushions. A personal food taster bows silently as you approach. It's not paranoia if everyone secretly wants your job. You nod. He nods. That means proceed. The first course is a warm, cardamom-scented porridge, ladled into a shallow dish of fine blue porcelain from China. The cooks claim it was inspired by Persian recipes, though historians still argue whether its roots are Central Asian or a local invention dressed up with raisins. Either way, it's soft, creamy, and just bland enough to remind you of childhood and power simultaneously. Next comes a spiced lentil stew, thick with ghee and topped with a sprig of coriander. You dip a folded wheat flatbread, still steaming from the tandoor, and take a bite. It's too early for spicy food, but you're a Mughal. Your stomach was born knowing how to digest nutmeg before sunrise. You eat slowly, watching 2 peacocks flirt under a nearby neem tree. One opens its tail like a theatrical reveal, then struts in a wide circle, clearly showing off. You smirk slightly. You've seen court dancers do the same move with less grace and fewer feathers. One of your favorite musicians appears at the edge of the pavilion, his eyes politely downcast. Without a word, he lifts a tanpura and begins to hum a slow raga for the morning. The notes rise and fall like soft breaths. The scent of warm milk and rosewater drifts through the air. Your shoulders relax. You chew another fig. Time for a moment forgets itself. A scribe sits nearby, jotting down any spontaneous thoughts you choose to speak aloud. You glance at him and say, "Remind me later. New taxes on ginger." He nods quickly. Whether you meant it or not doesn't matter. It's written now. It's real. After the meal, you rinse your fingers in a silver basin filled with scented water, then dry them on a towel embroidered with tiny birds. The birds were stitched by prisoners in Bengal, you're told. or maybe orphans, or possibly monks. The story changes depending on the mood of the storyteller. The towel is soft, either way. You rise. A eunuch places a silver toothpick in your hand. It's shaped like a miniature sword. Functional, yes, but also symbolic. Even your dental hygiene is a metaphor for empire. Next up is the morning darshan, a ceremony in which you, divinely appointed ruler, shadow of God on earth, wearer of gold-hemmed robes, allow the public to look at you for a few gracious minutes. Not speak to you, not touch you, just witness. It's part devotional, part political theater, and part crowd control. The Hall of Public Audience, or Diwan-i-Am, is already packed. Courtiers, petitioners, farmers from the countryside clutching scrolls, spies pretending to be merchants. Real merchants pretending to be spies. All eyes turn as you enter. You ascend your throne. It's not your grand peacock throne. That monstrosity is for special occasions. This one is smaller, simpler, though still entirely covered in gold leaf and mother of pearl, because, well, you're not a peasant. You sit, posture perfect, hands resting lightly on your knees. The sun catches the ring on your finger, a red ruby the size of a baby's fist. It's said to be cursed, but also said to bring clarity of mind. The empire runs on contradictions. One by one, a few pre-approved petitioners step forward. A land dispute in Gujarat, a water canal in Lahore that flooded a spice warehouse, a complaint about a noble's elephant eating someone's mango grove. You nod solemnly, you give orders. You ask one man if his beard is real. He looks stunned. The crowd laughs politely. Historians still argue whether these daily audiences had real political power or were more performative, like a royal Instagram story made out of incense and silk. But for the people in the room, your gaze is currency. Somewhere behind you, a scribe documents the entire exchange in Persian calligraphy, so fine it would make an angel blink. These pages will go into the imperial archive, where no one will read them unless there's a scandal. Your vizier leans in to whisper something urgent. You sigh. Already? It's barely mid-morning, and the tax collectors are fighting again. You motion to defer it until after the court poets perform. One must maintain priorities. An old astrologer in saffron robes is ushered in next, waving a copper astrolabe and mumbling about the moon's position. He smells like camphor and despair. You humor him. He's harmless. And besides, you need to know if today is a good day to issue a royal decree about minting new coins. After the darshan ends, you rise. The crowd parts. The eunuchs flank you again. Someone begins fanning you with a large peacock feather fan, even though there's a perfectly fine breeze already. Back through the long corridor. More whispers. More bowed heads. One noble compliments the sheen of your beard. You pretend not to hear. It's a good beard, but flattery before noon is exhausting. You return to your private chambers where fresh garments await. A saffron robe today, trimmed with silver thread. You change slowly, each piece handled by a separate attendant. One ties your sash, another fixes your turban with a tiny emerald pin. The third sprinkles your shoulders with crushed clove and sandalwood powder. You smell like a holy relic with ambition. It's not yet lunch. You've already heard 7 petitions, eaten 12 almonds, commissioned 1 new law, and smiled exactly twice. And now it's time for poetry. You enter the perfumed hush of the poetry hall like a deity descending from breakfast. Sunlight drips through jolly screens in geometric patterns across the stone floor, casting lace-like shadows that flicker as a peacock struts past the outer courtyard. Your feet tread softly on woven carpets brought in from Samarkand, every step muffled, every breath held slightly too long in reverence. A servant offers you a goblet of saffron-infused water with floating rose petals. You sip, mostly for the aesthetic. It tastes like flowers trying too hard, but hydration, like empire, must be maintained. This room, part salon, part sanctuary, is where you let language stretch its limbs. Before you, seated on brocade cushions, is a semicircle of poets, scribes, and curious courtiers pretending to understand meter. At the center sits today's featured poet, a skinny man in indigo robes whose beard is equal parts soot and existential dread. You invited him after his verses about the transience of mango season caught your attention last month, he begins. The room listens. It's not just poetry, it's performance. Each syllable unfurls like silk, laden with metaphors that link the decay of jasmine petals to the fall of dynasties. You nod appreciatively at the phrase, the moon's breath gliding through pomegranate trees. You make a mental note to steal that for tomorrow's decree on water usage. Behind you, a page takes down every word in crisp Persian script. Not for preservation necessarily, mostly so the poet can't claim he said something cleverer later. Imperial accuracy is petty but thorough. The poet reaches the final couplet, a verse about how even emperors lose their names to wind and time. The audience freezes. Was that shade? You tilt your head slowly, then clap once, loud and deliberate. The room exhales. It was a compliment. Maybe. You dismiss the poet with a jewel-encrusted nod. He bows too low, knocks over his inkpot, and is whisked away before the floor can stain. Someone throws rose petals. They flutter in slow arcs like sleepy butterflies. No one's sure who started that tradition, but now it's mandatory. Next is a young girl from the kitchens, barely 12, reciting a folk poem she claims her grandmother taught her while making rice cakes. Her voice is high and trembling, but you listen intently. She speaks of stars as gossiping aunties and jackals as village politicians. You laugh, genuinely, not the polite emperor kind. She beams. That laugh is now the highlight of her life, and possibly the new family legend. Historians still debate whether these poetry sessions had deeper political significance or were just imperial hobbies that got out of hand. Some argue they acted as subtle propaganda, praising your wisdom, veiled critiques of your rivals, coded messages to the court. Others think you just like the sound of your name rhymed with celestial flame. Either way, by midday, you've approved 3 royal poems for inclusion in tomorrow's court bulletin, and offered a plum orchard to one poet whose ode to turmeric made you hungry. Speaking of which, your stomach grumbles faintly beneath your embroidered sash. Right on cue, a eunuch clears his throat softly and announces that the lunch preparations are complete. You rise from your cushions, joints clicking softly, and stroll toward the garden terrace where lunch is served. The scent hits you before the dishes appear. Cumin, saffron, slow-cooked meats, sweet rice, tamarind chutney, and fried bread so delicate they deflate when you glance at them sternly. The lunch pavilion is shaded by a painted awning depicting celestial maps and oddly muscular cherubs. Your grandfather's taste, not yours. You sit cross-legged on a cushion, the same deep jade hue as your ring, and eye the meal ahead. You count 14 small dishes, moderate by Mughal standards. First comes a spiced lamb stew with cloves and apricots, ladled over saffron rice that glistens like it was polished 1 grain at a time. A servant offers a side of mango pickles aged in clay pots buried for 5 months. You nod approvingly. Good pickles require the same patience as empire building and slightly more salt. A thick yogurt drink arrives, chilled with snow from the mountains. Yes, actual mountain snow, wrapped in woven mats, packed with sawdust, and carried on camelback from Kashmir. It took 3 weeks to arrive. You sip it in 3 seconds. Worth it. Your court chronicler joins you at a respectful distance. He's there not to eat, but to record what you eat. Every emperor's menu becomes legend, eventually. He scratches notes about your 3rd helping of lentil fritters. You glance at him. He pretends not to notice. At the edge of the terrace, a pair of antelope nibble at the trimmed hedges. They were gifted by a visiting ambassador from the Deccan who swore they could predict the weather by sneezing. So far, they've only predicted when lunch begins. Just as you reach for a honey-drenched fig, a small commotion arises near the servants' entrance. A covered tray has arrived unexpectedly. The note says it's from your youngest wife, an experimental almond dessert shaped like lotus petals. She's been studying Persian culinary texts again. The dessert tastes fascinating, like an academic idea translated into sugar. You pretend to enjoy it and nod meaningfully. Later, she'll ask what you thought of it, and you'll say something vague like, "The texture was ambitious." Historians still argue whether you ever truly enjoyed meals, or if they were just another form of performance. After all, every bite, every choice of spice, even how you broke your bread was watched, noted, and retold. As lunch ends, you dip your fingers into a basin of rose water and pat your mouth with a napkin embroidered with gold thread verses. Somewhere in the palace, the musicians begin tuning their instruments for the afternoon concert. But first, nap time. Yes, even emperors have nap time. It's not weakness, it's strategy. You call it strategic repose, and frankly, if you ruled a vast multi-ethnic empire held together by diplomacy, elephants, and finely aged pickles, you'd need naps too. You retreat into the nap chamber. Thick drapes, low light, the scent of vetiver on the pillows. A servant fans you slowly. Another reads aloud a passage from a Persian romance, voice barely above a whisper. You close your eyes. The room melts around you. Time sighs and pauses. And somewhere, a jasmine blossom falls onto a cushion and isn't noticed until dinner. You wake to the sound of a sitar being tuned, each note a soft ripple across the nap chamber's quiet hush. Your eyes open slowly, adjusting to the diffused golden light pouring through tinted glass panels. Reds and ambers that make everything look slightly honeyed and slightly holy. A cool breeze drifts in from the perfumed garden. It smells of neroli and marigold, and because palace windows are never as draft-proof as they claim, one faint note of camel. You stretch like a well-fed cat. You nap like a sovereign. Refreshed, you rise to your feet, and within seconds a retinue of attendants glide in, bearing water bowls, cloths, and a fresh robe in pale saffron silk, embroidered with phoenixes so tiny that even your pet hawk thinks they're real. Post-nap grooming is a performance in itself. Your hair is oiled with almond essence and combed until it gleams like river light. Your beard is trimmed with alarming precision. A faint kohl line is drawn around your eyes. Not vanity, you insist. Just tradition. Also, it makes you look devastatingly alert for the 3 p.m. council session. And now you emerge into the Diwan-i-Khaz, the hall of private audience. Its ceiling is a marvel of Mughal ambition. Arched, scalloped, painted in lapis and gold leaf. You take your seat upon a modestly enormous cushion on a silver-inlaid platform. Beside you, a jade hookah, unlit for now. Before you, ministers, generals, scribes, translators, and one courtier who brought an enormous map he insists you'll love. Spoiler, you won't. The council session begins. You review military postings, examine grain store records, and pretend to care deeply about canal maintenance. You do care, actually. A little. It's just hard to maintain emotional investment in barley logistics when your internal monologue is still reciting the fig poem from earlier. A general steps forward with troubling news from the northwest border. Apparently, one of your governors has decided he's no longer interested in being governed. You raise an eyebrow. Everyone else in the room raises theirs too, in sympathy. You dictate a message equal parts poetic disappointment and veiled threat. It includes a metaphor about a mango tree ignoring its roots. You're particularly proud of that one. Next, taxation petitions. A merchant from Lahore presents a case for reduced tariffs on saffron imports. You glance at his shoes. They are suspiciously new. His logic is sound, though. You approve a trial exemption. The scribe records it, and the merchant bows so low you can see his bald spot shining under the chandelier. Now a debate about coinage. Historians still argue whether your decision to standardize gold and silver weights, was born from economic brilliance or obsessive need for matching things. You do like symmetry, but you also hate fake coins, and the empire is very big and very full of counterfeiters. One minister proposes adding your portrait to the coins. You recoil slightly. Why would you want your nose immortalized in miniature for peasant fingers to smudge? You reject the idea politely. The nose stays imperial. By now, the hall is growing warmer. You sip rosewater and signal for the incense burners to be lit. They release coils of sandalwood smoke that drift lazily toward the domed ceiling, like shy ghosts ascending to file complaints. There's a brief musical interlude while you wait for the ambassador from the Ottoman Empire to arrive. He's late. He's always late. You suspect he does it on purpose just to see how long you'll sit. Joke's on him. You have nowhere better to be, and the carpet under your feet feels like kneeling on whipped cream. When he does arrive, cloaked in dignity and slightly sweaty, you greet him in faultless Turkish. He replies with flowery compliments about your wisdom, your complexion, and the palace's pomegranate trees. You listen with a regal smile. He hands over a gift, a golden astrolabe inlaid with lapis and rubies. You pretend you don't already own 6. In return, you offer a peacock. Not just any peacock, one that dances on command and wears anklets. It's trained to respond to drum beats. It performs a short, deeply confusing jig. The ambassador is both delighted and alarmed. You nod serenely. Empire is 60% optics. Once he's escorted to the refreshment chamber for snacks and light flattery, you return to the day's real priority: deciding the color scheme for the new royal garden. Your wife suggests lavender and teal. The chief gardener offers ochre and crimson. You settle on all 4. The garden will be divided into quadrants, each representing a different season, mood, and citrus preference. You pause. You look out across the marble balcony. Below, the city sprawls like a living scroll. Markets buzzing, hawkers yelling, silks fluttering, goats arguing with reality. Smoke spirals from rooftops. Somewhere, someone is being mildly trampled by an enthusiastic elephant. Historians still argue whether you ever truly grasped the scale of the world outside your palace walls. Some say you did, keenly, precisely. Others think you ruled through artful detachment, seeing your subjects as elements in a vast celestial diagram. You know the truth lies somewhere between your sandals and the stars. As the sun tilts toward the west, you conclude the council session with a wave. Attendants appear to escort the ministers out, their scrolls tucked like sleeping birds beneath their arms. You rise. You move slowly now, not from age, but from calculation. Every step is the answer to a question no one asked. What does power look like when it walks? You return to the private veranda for your late afternoon solitude. This is your least imperial hour. No court, no courtiers, just you. A porcelain cup of jasmine tea, and the distant sound of the palace falconer arguing with his birds. He loses often. You write a short verse in your journal. Something about wind through Cyprus. You forget it instantly, that's fine. The act was the point. By the time the first evening lamps are lit, the shadows in your chamber are long and golden. A servant enters barefoot and silent to light the room's lanterns one by one. Flame to wick, wick to glow, until the walls are awash in amber light. Dinner is not far now, but before that, one final pleasure. You summon the royal perfumer. He enters with reverence in a brass tray bearing tiny glass bottles, each sealed with wax, each containing liquid as rare as prophecy. He places one drop behind each ear. Rose attar aged 12 years in a sandalwood box, mixed with a hint of spikenard and, rumor says, sapphire dust. You smell like wealth composed a love poem and then wept into a bottle. And with that, you're ready to dine. Dinner arrives not with fanfare, but with a quiet rustle of silk, and the soft clink of utensils laid with monastic precision. You're seated cross-legged on a low dais draped in embroidered damask, cushions propped just right beneath each knee because even emperors deserve ergonomic support. A gold-threaded napkin rests on your lap, a modest concession to formality in a meal that's anything but modest. You don't eat alone, of course, not entirely. Several trusted courtiers join you for the evening repast: poets, philosophers, and one astronomer who insists the moon has moods. You humor him. You've had staff with worse hobbies. Platters arrive in a choreographed sequence: tender lamb marinated in yogurt and saffron, skewers of spiced pigeon, bowls of fragrant biryani peppered with dried rose petals and pistachio slivers. A pyramid of naan towers at the center like a sacred bread obelisk. The table glows with tiny brass lamps, their flames reflected in dishes of pickled mango and tamarind chutney. You reach first for the lentils, dark and velvety, slow-cooked for hours with garlic and ghee. They slide across your tongue like silk. You follow with roasted quail, delicately basted in cinnamon and clove. Each bite is a masterclass in conquest. Flavors drawn from every province, every tributary state, all simmering into one imperial supper. Historians still argue whether Mughal dinners were truly this elaborate every night, or just when diplomats were watching. But your cook takes no shortcuts. Even your rice has a reputation. It's been soaked, drained, steamed, and blessed by a grandmother somewhere in the hills who swears the key to perfect grains is a whispered lullaby. You sip from a goblet of rose sherbet, cool and lightly carbonated with a touch of camphor. Beside it, slices of pomegranate and guava, arranged in alternating rows because symmetry soothes you more than it should. Across from you, the poet begins reciting lines about a lover whose voice turns to wind. He gets misty-eyed halfway through. You reach for a pickle. As you chew, your mind drifts. This meal isn't just food, it's geography, it's diplomacy, it's legacy. Every ingredient traveled, every spice was bargained or bartered or, if we're being honest, conquered into your kitchen. You taste your empire with every mouthful. And despite all the fanfare, you're still a bit hungry. You signal for the sweets. And then they arrive. A parade of sugar and ghee, each one threatening to throw your blood pressure into celestial orbit. There are golden jalebis dripping syrup, cardamom-scented kheer chilled in terracotta bowls, almond halwa molded into the shape of miniature lotus blooms. You try the barfi first. It melts like snow kissed by a wish. You follow with pistachio laddus, which crumble against your tongue before you've even chewed. There's a brief but intense flirtation with a candied rose petal. Even your astronomer is impressed. Speaking of which, he unrolls a chart mid-dinner and begins pointing to constellations that supposedly align with your birth hour. You glance at the night sky above the veranda, wondering if it's true that Venus is favorable tonight. You nod, solemn. "We'll schedule a new garden," you murmur, as though the stars have told you to plant figs. The conversation drifts now like incense through a high dome. One courtier shares a rumor that a rival ruler in the south has imported Portuguese cheese and is eating it with pears. Everyone gasps, then debates for a solid 10 minutes whether fruit and dairy should ever mix. You declare it a foreign curiosity and forbid discussion until dessert digestion is complete. You recline slightly, letting your dinner settle like a sultanic stone in your belly. A servant massages your feet with scented oil, frankincense and musk, a blend supposedly favored by ancient kings and overambitious apothecaries. The sensation is somewhere between a lullaby and a negotiation with your toes. You think about writing a poem, but then you remember the fig verse from earlier and decide against it. One final treat. A pain leaf wrapped tight with crushed areca nut, cardamom, and a suspiciously sparkling sugar crystal. You chew it slowly, feeling the cool sting hit your gums, the floral heat creeping through your sinuses like a summer breeze with secrets. Outside, the sky bruises into twilight. You rise from dinner with the grace of a man whose knees just made 3 new sounds. A fresh robe is waiting. This one dyed indigo and lined with silver thread so fine it might actually be moonlight woven by a very skilled spider. You pause at a window overlooking the palace courtyard. Below, torchbearers begin their twilight rounds. Oil lamps flicker to life in niches and corridors, casting golden halos onto white marble. The fountains still trickle. The peacocks are, thankfully, asleep. You hear the quiet sweep of brooms against sandstone, preparing the night for footsteps in case you decide to wander. You don't, not yet. Instead, you walk slowly to your evening chamber, a separate, smaller room with walls painted in deep earth tones, roofed in carved teak. The floor is strewn with carpets from Herat and Samarkand, faded and beloved. A niche in the wall holds your private library. Scrolls, miniatures, a jade compass gifted by a weary traveler. And tucked behind it all, a locked, lacquered box containing your grandfather's final letter still unread. You're saving it for a day when the Empire feels too quiet. Tonight isn't that day. You settle onto a divan and call for your reader. She arrives barefoot, carrying a manuscript wrapped in brocade. She reads aloud, softly, rhythmically, her voice the sound of candlelight touching paper. It's a story about a blind caravan leader who memorized every dune by smell. You listen, eyes half-lidded, as the plot winds through deserts, markets, betrayal, and redemption, all before page 12. Historians still argue whether Mughal emperors preferred Persian epics or local folklore in these nightly sessions. You enjoy both, but tonight's tale has a camel with a gambling problem, and that's frankly too good to skip. Eventually, the story ends, and your eyelids flutter shut. Not from exhaustion, but from fullness. Your body is wrapped in warmth and silk and sugar and words. There's a certain stillness in your bones now, like a scroll freshly rolled. And somewhere in your stomach, the biryani is quietly building its empire. Sleep may come later, but first, there's a ritual to observe. One that drips with symbolism and, let's be honest, a good bit of self-indulgence. You've eaten like a demigod, listened like a poet, and now? Now it's time to bathe like a waterfall's favorite customer. Your attendants have already begun the preparations. The private hammam lies just beyond your chamber, an enclosed sanctuary of domed ceilings, whispering fountains, and steam so thick it feels like you've walked into a cloud with plumbing. You step out of your indigo robe, shivering ever so slightly as warm mist greets your bare skin. The marble underfoot is heated from beneath, an ingenious system of flues and brick channels that makes you wonder, not for the first time, if your bathhouse is smarter than a half your council. A young servant pours water from a hammered copper jug, its spout shaped like a lion's head. The water steams as it hits your shoulders, trailing down your spine in rivulets that carry the day's dust and half your ambitions with them. You exhale slowly. Every drop feels like a minor enlightenment. The soap is made from olive oil and wild honey, laced with crushed turmeric and something piney. It's rubbed into a lather using a rough silk mitt, exfoliating both your skin and, allegedly, your soul. Historians still argue whether Mughal emperors believed in literal spiritual cleansing through bathing, or if that was just an excuse for having 3-hour spa days. Either way, it works. As the bath deepens, so does your dreaminess. Steam curls around your temples, clinging to your lashes. One attendant hums a lullaby you dimly recognize from childhood. Another scrubs your feet with a stone carved into the shape of a fish. You briefly consider naming it Minister of Clean Toes. Then comes the rose water. It's not poured. Oh no, it's misted, wafted through the air using palm fans, and sprinkled from above like divine approval. The scent is heady but soft, like a memory you're not sure you had. It mixes with sandalwood, cardamom, and the faintest hint of... Wait, is that saffron? You're not sure if you're being cleansed or marinated. Your hair is washed with lotus paste, combed with a tortoiseshell tool passed down from your great aunt. She once claimed it tamed demons and knots alike. You believe it, mostly because your scalp now feels like it belongs to a contented deity, a gentle scrub under the arms, a light scrape of the tongue with a curved silver tool. The Mughals didn't do hygiene halfway. The final rinse comes from a ceramic amphora of cold jasmine tea, poured in one long, cooling stream that starts at your crown and trickles down like mountain runoff. You shiver again, half from chill, half from the sudden absence of warmth. The bath is done. You're toweled dry with cloths the width of rivers and softer than the poet's metaphors. The attendants wrap you in a fresh robe, this one dyed saffron and lined with a whisper of ermine, the kind of fur that says, I conquered a region and all I got was this luxurious trim. You return to your chamber, skin pink with circulation and dreams. On a small tray, chilled coconut water, a silver bowl of fennel seeds, and a folded note from your sister asking if you finally agreed to her marriage proposal for that scholar. You pretend not to see it. Instead, you sit and let your hair dry naturally, a rare moment of stillness. A servant oils your joints with almond salve. Another trims your nails with a tiny crescent-shaped blade that once belonged to a Persian healer who said, a sharp tool should never meet a dull man. You laugh to yourself. Across the room, your nightwear is being aired. And it's not just pajamas, it's a statement. Wide trousers of teal silk, a tunic of indigo muslin, and a shawl stitched with a constellation map only visible under moonlight. That last bit may be folklore, or just your astronomer's latest prank. Dressed, scented, and utterly sponge-like from relaxation, you feel the weight of sleep tug at your bones. But not yet. There's still one more step. A short walk to the prayer alcove, tucked into the corner of your chamber. The floor is bare save for a simple woolen mat. The air is quiet. No incense, no flutes, just the whisper of wind through a carved jaili screen. You lower yourself, joints murmuring like old friends. You close your eyes. No elaborate chants tonight, just a few words. Gratitude for the meal. Thanks for the bath. A small plea that tomorrow's council meeting doesn't involve another land tax debate. You linger in silence. One heartbeat, then two. Then you rise. Back at your bed, the mattress has been warmed with bricks wrapped in linen. Your pillow smells of lavender and myrrh. On a nearby table, a scroll rests open with a half-finished verse you may return to. If the gods of sleep are slow in coming. Historians still argue whether Mughal emperors slept on cotton or silk, firm or soft, alone or surrounded by attendants. You don't argue. You just lie down and let the sheets swallow you. The room darkens to a hush. In the courtyard, the night guards shift positions with the subtle shuffle of boots on stone. A nightingale begins to sing, just one note, then a second, as if testing the acoustics. You smile. Even the birds understand the value of timing. You stretch once, arms high, toes pointed, then settle again, like ink drying on parchment. Somewhere in the distance, a water wheel turns, a reminder that even in rest, the world does not pause. And yet, right now, it feels like it might. The next moment unfolds like the gentle unfurling of a scroll, inked with serenity, perfumed with peace. You're not asleep, not fully awake either, just drifting in that perfect middle zone when everything feels both ancient and intimate. But even emperors don't get to laze forever. A soft knock on the chamber door signals the arrival of the midnight physician. Yes, that's right. There's a man whose sole job is to make sure you haven't died in your sleep from rich food or existential dread. You open one eye. He bows low, holding a brass tray with a porcelain cup of warm milk, steeped in cardamom and poppy seeds. The milk is supposed to lull you into deeper sleep and prevent bad dreams, though historians still argue whether this was superstition or Mughal medical science disguised as dessert. You sip slowly, letting the warmth slide down your throat like a lullaby made liquid. The physician watches your pulse as you drink. 2 fingers press lightly against your wrist as if your dreams might whisper secrets to him through your heartbeat. Satisfied, he nods and slips away like a well-trained ghost. You lie back. And now, yes, now you sleep. But your household does not. While you drift into that opium-dusted cloud of unconsciousness, the palace continues its nighttime hum. Servants rearrange linens. Eunuchs patrol the corridors. The chief astrologer pores over lunar charts to determine whether your next military campaign should begin on a Wednesday or a Thursday. Apparently Mars has opinions. You are, in every sense, the eye of a silken storm. At the very center, still and safe. But around you, hundreds of people work in quiet harmony to ensure you wake rested, fed, dressed, and blissfully unaware of how many fires almost started while you dreamed of mangoes and elephants. Just before dawn, you stir. It's not yet time to rise, but your internal clock, attuned to decades of routine, lets you hover in that tender space between slumber and sunlight. You can hear birds beginning to murmur in the neem trees outside. The charcoal in the brazier has burned low, and a servant silently stokes it from the hallway with a long iron rod so the crackle doesn't wake you fully. The early watch poet arrives. Yes, of course there's a poet. Doesn't everyone have one to recite verses at the edge of consciousness? He sits just outside your room on a low stool cushioned with goat wool and recites couplets from Rumi and Khusrau, his voice barely above a whisper. You hear the words but don't understand them, not yet. They're meant to drip into your dreams, not your thoughts. It's more charm than lecture. Some lines stay with you. The moon lives in the lining of your skin. Even in sleep the garden grows. He will keep speaking until your breathing shifts again, signaling true sleep, or until the official wake-up bell tolls. Meanwhile, the kitchen begins to stir. In the pre-dawn chill, fires are lit in the deep stone ovens. A line of cooks, some whispering, others yawning, begin preparing your favorite early snack. Hot milk cakes spiced with nutmeg and cloves. Not breakfast, just a dawn morsel, because of course even hunger in the Mughal court wears fancy shoes. Somewhere in the stables, a groom sharpens the ornamental harnesses for your morning elephants. You probably won't ride them, but it's best they shine, like every other ridiculous, wonderful part of your waking world. You turn slightly in bed. A servant senses this through what must be sheer magic, and quietly begins untying the curtains from around your sleeping area. The bed canopy parts just a little, letting in a whisper of fresh air that smells like jasmine, charcoal, and anticipation. But you don't get up yet. Instead, you listen to the clink of steel trays in the hallway, to the splash of water in stone basins, to the soft mutterings of people who have already begun your day for you. 1,000 footsteps tread quietly on embroidered rugs, all so that your own 2 feet never touch cold stone. You stretch one arm out, hand grazing the cool edge of a golden blanket embroidered with tiny elephants no bigger than ants. It was a gift from your mother, or your uncle, or a visiting prince. You've forgotten, but it's soft and familiar, and smells faintly of cedar. Still lying in bed, you let your eyes flicker open fully for the first time. Moonlight still filters through the latticed windows, but it's beginning to fade. The stars outside your carved balcony retreat one by one, like courtiers leaving a silent audience. You wonder if the constellations looked the same the night your grandfather marched across Persia, or when your father took his first elephant ride. No one ever talks about their dreams in court, but if you could, you might describe this exact moment as one. Drifting in a palace made of steam, verse, and velvet. Suspended between worlds while a kingdom quietly sharpens your morning. The room is gently illuminated by oil lamps, their flames flickering inside colored glass. They cast warm shadows that dance on the wall and make your luxurious chambers feel, just for a moment, like a sacred cave or a memory. You close your eyes again for a final moment of rest, knowing that when they open next, the day will truly begin. And outside, someone strikes a small bell, once, twice, echoing softly through the corridors. Time to rise. You sit up slowly like a mountain unfolding at dawn. Every gesture has its place. Every movement feels like a ceremony rehearsed 1,000 times because it has been. You're not just waking, you're entering the world again as the Mughal emperor. The curtains are pulled wide now, and in comes the golden wash of sunrise. Not some boring pale light either. We're talking full-on saffron rays spilling through the jolly latticework, casting intricate patterns on the marble floor like divine geometry. Birds wheel past the windows. One caws too loudly. It is promptly escorted off the palace grounds by a hawk handler. Probably. You swing your legs over the side of your vast four-poster bed. Two valets immediately step forward, their heads bowed, holding soft slippers lined with sheep wool. The stone floors are cold, after all, and you're not about to risk frostbite when you've got 1,000 soldiers, 50 concubines, and at least 3 rival cousins waiting to challenge your authority today. First order of business, the morning cleanse. Your royal bath is already prepared. A marble pool, shallow and warm, is scattered with rose petals and slices of sandalwood. A eunuch checks the water temperature with his elbow because, apparently, even thermometers can't be trusted with this level of responsibility. You step in slowly. The water embraces you. Now, this isn't your average 2-minute rinse. This is a full-body ritual. Attendants move with practiced grace, pouring warm water scented with vetiver and bergamot from hammered silver ewers over your shoulders. Another massages a custom blend of chickpea flour, turmeric, and almond paste onto your arms. It's a cleanser, exfoliant, and subtle flex all in one. Historians still argue whether this ritual was purely hygienic or if it doubled as spiritual preparation for rulership. But you're just enjoying not having to wash your own hair, which, by the way, is lathered in a thick soap made of lotus root oil and saffron, then combed out with a bone-handled brush older than your youngest son. You linger in the water, half listening to the soothing splash and the hum of attendants reciting soft Persian couplets. One of them always sings the same line. He who is clean in body rules with a clean mind. You've never asked him to stop. You like the rhythm of it. Now that you're warm, perfumed, and gleaming like a waxed melon, you step out onto a carpet of soft cotton towels. Another valet wraps you in an indigo robe trimmed with teal and russet brocade. You notice a small tear near the hem. Someone's definitely getting a polite but firm talking to about that later. You're led to the grooming couch. Yes, a couch dedicated entirely to the management of your royal face. A court barber, technically a low-ranking noble because of how often he touches your literal royal neck, begins the daily shave. He uses a blade so sharp it could bisect a whisper. He draws it across your jaw with the reverence of someone sketching poetry on rice paper. Behind him, an assistant holds a bronze mirror. You don't need it. You already know you look devastatingly dignified, but you glance anyway. Not bad. You'd marry you. The shave is followed by a quick application of sandalwood balm, and finally the ceremonial mustache combing. Yes, the mustache has its own brush, made of boar bristle, carved by a blind artisan in Kashmir. Obviously, you're now officially clean, scented, groomed, and wrapped in fabric worth more than most mansions. But wait, don't go ruling anything just yet, because it's time for breakfast. Servants roll in a low lacquered table adorned with small brass dishes, each covered with a thin muslin cloth. The first meal of the day is a subtle dance of nutrition, luxury, and politics. You reach for a slice of mango, perfectly ripe, its scent a sunbeam in fruit form. It's from your private orchard outside Lahore, and yes, of course it's better than other mangoes. You're the emperor. There's also flatbread hot off the tandoor, folded into triangles and stacked like golden origami. Small bowls of clotted cream sit beside thick date syrup and crushed pistachios. You dip the bread, eat slowly, and let your mind begin its own daily inventory. One mouthful of tamarind chutney in, and you're already planning how to deal with that governor who keeps accidentally collecting double taxes. He's either corrupt or bad at math, and neither is a good look. A tray of sweet rice is offered, dotted with saffron and garnished with strands of silver leaf. You take a polite bite. It's mostly for show, like a crown you eat instead of wear. A courtier enters quietly and kneels. It's the first business interaction of the day, and you acknowledge him with the barest tilt of your head. Enough to say speak, but not enough to imply friendship. That's emperor etiquette. He delivers a scroll sealed in green wax. You unroll it slowly, letting the delicate rustle of parchment fill the chamber. It's a report from the astrologers again. Apparently, Venus is entering the house of conflict. Great. That'll make court decisions today extra spicy. You wave him away. Another cup of warm milk, this one with crushed almonds and a pinch of cinnamon, is set before you. It's comforting. It's power. It's breakfast fit for someone who doesn't have to do his own taxes. Outside your chambers, the court musicians begin playing the morning raga. Soft sitar and flute, weaving sound through sunbeams and rising steam. It's less about the melody, more about the mood. And today, the mood is ready. You rise. The ceremonial turban is brought forward on a golden pillow, folded and starched into perfect regal geometry. Your hands lift it carefully. The weight of it settles across your brow like a halo dipped in responsibility. You adjust it once, twice. Perfect. Time to greet the day, wrapped in silk, scented with rose oil and full of mango. You step out of your private quarters and into the hallway, and just like that, your body becomes public property again. The stone corridor echoes with footsteps. Your footsteps, your guards' footsteps, the careful scurrying of servants who know better than to get in your way, but can't resist sneaking glances. Being the emperor is kind of like being the sun. Nobody stares directly, but everyone still orbits. Your morning court awaits. The Diwan-i-Am, the hall of public audience, is already bustling by the time you enter. The soundscape here is different. Murmurs clipped short, sandals brushing sandstone, scribes snapping open scrolls, an elephant braying in the courtyard for no good reason. He's decorative but moody. As you take your place on the raised marble dais, a hush descends like a silk curtain. The cushions are arranged just so. The canopy above your head shimmers with real gold thread. You sit down in one practiced move, legs folded, spine straight. Power looks effortless when you've practiced it since age 5. This is not the throne room. That comes later. This is the warm-up court, the place where grievances are aired, land disputes are settled, and petitions are offered by trembling hands. Here, even the humblest peasant has the theoretical right to speak directly to the emperor. In practice, of course, there's a long vetting process and a few guards who absolutely love saying no. Your vizier stands beside you, fanning out a short stack of petitions. His job is to read them aloud, and your job is to pretend like you didn't already hear all the summaries during breakfast. A farmer from Gujarat says his irrigation canal was diverted by a nobleman's hunting party. You raise an eyebrow. Hunting tigers is one thing, stealing water is another. You issue a stern reprimand, laced with metaphor. Something about jackals and lion skins. The nobles know who you mean. Message delivered. Next up, a widow from Malton seeks protection from a corrupt tax collector. She kneels before the dais, her sari the muted gray of mourning. You listen, you ask questions. Historians still argue whether your concern is performative or genuine, but for now you make a show of scribbling her name into your personal ledger. You promise justice. The crowd nods approvingly. Sometimes you get weird ones, like the merchant today who swears a palace guard stole his prize goat and disguised it as a dog. You glance at your bodyguard's very serious face. No reaction. Either he's innocent or he's very committed to the bit. You order an inquiry. Privately, you hope the goat's wearing a little collar somewhere. You sip a cup of iced rose water from time to time. It's hot today. A breeze filters in through the arches, stirring the tall banners that hang from the colonnade. Each banner displays a royal symbol. Peacocks, lotuses, suns, swords. They sway like lazy dancers. There's a whole team of artisans whose only job is banner maintenance. You once met them. They take themselves very seriously. You respect that. As noon approaches, the crowd in the audience hall begins to thin. The petitions grow more abstract. One holy man requests funds to build a library that only contains scrolls written during full moons. You almost approve it out of sheer admiration for the commitment. Someone else offers you a hand-woven prayer rug from Bukhara, dyed with crushed pomegranate skins and stitched with microscopic verses from the Quran. You accept it with a solemn nod, then pass it to an attendant. You have an entire room filled with rugs. It's like carpet Tetris in there. By now, the musicians have switched to the midday raga, a slower, heavier mood, like a deep breath held underwater. The scent of vetiver hangs in the air, carried by ceiling fans, shaped like lotus leaves. They're powered by servants pulling cords in hidden galleries above you. Somewhere, a boy's entire job is to keep those blades spinning. That's history's version of air conditioning. You stand. The crowd bows, almost like a wave receding from shore. The vizier bows too. The hall empties quickly. You exit through a side colonnade, walking along polished marble tiles toward your private chambers. A servant follows, sprinkling rose water in your path. You're not sure if it's for you or for the marble. Either way, it smells amazing, but the day isn't even halfway done. Time now for private consultation. You settle into a cushioned alcove in your study where shelves brim with manuscripts, letters, and reports bound in silk and sealed with wax. Your calligrapher enters, brush in hand, ready to transcribe your thoughts, rulings, or spontaneous poetry. You dictate a letter to a Rajput prince. The language is flowery but firm. You're offering an alliance, or maybe a warning. Depends how they read it. There's also a box of foreign trinkets to review, gifts from traders who just docked in Surat. One offers a mechanical music box shaped like a birdcage. It chirps when wound. You're skeptical, you're delighted, you're both. A bowl of candied almonds is set beside you. You pop one into your mouth. Sweet, crunchy, a little smoky. You ask where they came from. The answer? A tiny shop in Kabul. You make a note to send the owner a brocade robe and a thank you poem. Probably something about almonds and loyalty. You pause. The sound of afternoon prayer call rises from the mosque's minaret just beyond the garden wall. It swells gently like a tide in the air. You don't rush. You rise slowly, nod to your scribe, and make your way to the ablution fountain. There is still so much left to rule. But first, wash hands, face, elbows. God might forgive all things. But not skipping proper wudu. After prayer, your mood changes. Something inside you softens or maybe sharpens. It's hard to tell. Either way, the business of empire can wait for just a breath. You walk slowly back through the sunlit corridors, past muraled walls alive with green parrots and blue lotuses, until you reach your next appointment, the afternoon court, the Diwani Cause. This one's for insiders only. Here there's no crowd, no farmers with complaints, no lost goats in disguise. Just you, your top advisors, and a small circle of nobles who wield enough influence to cause serious problems, or solve them if properly motivated. You sit under a ceiling painted to resemble the heavens. Stars of gold leaf sparkle above while 4 giant cypress columns hold up the sky. The floor is smooth white marble, inlaid with semi-precious stones that spell out verses of poetry in Persian and Sanskrit. It's like walking across a love letter and a manifesto at the same time. Your throne in this chamber is smaller, lower, more symbolic than authoritarian. Here, you're not playing God. You're playing chess. One by one, the dignitaries enter and greet you with bows, murmured blessings, averted eyes. You know each of them too well. Who wants power, who fears disgrace, who's secretly in love with their own reflection. You let them talk. They always want to talk. Land grants, marriages, trade routes, the location of the best mango orchard in Bengal. That one gets your attention. A thick scroll is unrolled before you, covered in the looping ink of your tax scribes. Revenues are up this season, thanks to a bumper wheat crop and, curiously, an increase in indigo dye exports. You make a mental note to look into that. Historians still argue whether you truly understood the complexities of your empire's economy, or just pretended convincingly. Honestly, it's both. As your finance minister drones on, you notice a small black beetle crawling across the inlaid marble near your foot. You watch it navigate the word eternity spelled in lapis lazuli. You feel weirdly comforted. There are brief discussions on matters military. A general from the northwest frontier presents a report written on stretched goatskin parchment. The borders are stable for now, though there are whispers of unrest among the hill tribes. You nod, unconcerned. You've heard this before, probably in your sleep. Then someone mentions the Portuguese again. Ah yes, the Europeans. Red-faced, garlic-smelling, gold-hungry creatures with oddly square boats. They're poking around the coastal trade towns again, talking about spices and souls. You stroke your beard thoughtfully. Maybe send them a polite warning, and a suspiciously generous gift basket. Let them wonder what's laced with poison. After an hour or so, the court begins to lose steam. The nobles get quieter. The advisors run out of charts. Someone coughs theatrically. You stretch your back and declare the session closed. Now it's time for the most sacred ritual of all. Lunch. Back in your private dining chamber, a low marble table has already been set, surrounded by silken cushions in teal and gold. The food is simple by emperor standards, because you asked for it that way. Too many spices before your afternoon nap? Disaster. The last time it happened, you dreamt of riding a flaming goose into battle against an army of dancing turnips. Never again. Today's spread includes fragrant saffron rice, a dish of stewed lentils with garlic and fenugreek, slivers of roasted lamb glazed with tamarind, and a bowl of chilled mango slices. There's yogurt with mint, pickled lime, flatbreads warm from the tandoor, and of course a small jug of spiced buttermilk to cool everything down. You eat slowly with your fingers savoring each bite. A servant fans you with a giant peacock feather fan. Another plays a stringed instrument so softly it's like the ghost of music. Halfway through your meal, your youngest son bursts in uninvited. He's 8, bold, covered in ink. You sigh theatrically and wave him over. He wants to show you a poem he wrote. It's about elephants and the moon and something called night dust. It makes no sense. You love it. This moment will be remembered, not by historians, but by your son. After lunch, your physician checks your pulse. He doesn't ask, he just appears like a worried cloud. He takes your wrist, counts silently, then hands you a tiny gilded tin of crushed pearls and cardamom. For balance, he says. He always says that. You always take it. It's nap time. Yes, Emperor's nap. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying or very cranky. You lie on a divan in your shaded chamber where the ceiling is painted in soft indigo and hung with glass lanterns shaped like swans. Silk curtains ripple in the warm breeze. Somewhere in the garden, a mynah bird calls once, then falls silent. You close your eyes. For a moment, the whole empire breathes with you. Outside, the world continues. Merchants haggle, soldiers train, courtiers whisper. But inside this moment, all is still. This is the exact center of the day, the golden hinge between exertion and leisure. The pulse of empire softens. You sleep, only for an hour. Just long enough to dream of that flaming goose again, but this time it's wearing a tiny crown. You wake up slowly, your thoughts coated in that sleepy glaze that makes everything feel half real. The fan is still swaying. The shadows have shifted. Somewhere nearby, water drips softly into a basin, keeping time like a patient metronome. You blink against the soft, filtered light, stretch your arms and sit up. No alarm bells, no clanging gongs. Just the gentle tug of duty resuming its grip. A servant brings a bowl of rose water and a clean towel. You wash your face, fingers lingering at the corners of your eyes where dreams still hide. The towel is soft, embroidered with tiny lotuses, each one stitched by hand. Probably by someone whose name you'll never know. Empires run on anonymous stitches. Refreshed, you step into the corridor. It's time for the Darbar-e-Nisa, the women's audience. Unlike the morning court or the Diwani-Kaz, this one is private in a different way. Fewer politics, more persuasion. You make your way through the mirrored hallway, past perfumed curtains and sandalwood doors until you reach the Zenana courtyard. Here your wives and royal women have gathered. Not in silks and jewels, but in relaxed cotton robes, lounging on cushions and sipping chilled sherbet. You're the only man allowed in this space, and even then it's only because you're you. The conversation is lively. Your third wife is complaining about a parrot who's learned to insult guests in 3 languages. Your oldest daughter is sketching designs for a new garden terrace. Your mother, regal as ever, sits at the far end of the courtyard, spinning prayer beads like she's negotiating with the divine. They ask you questions, important ones too. Why is jasmine blooming late this year? Can we host the spring poetry contest indoors this time? Did you know the Queen of Malwa has a gold-backed mirror shaped like a fish? You listen. You nod. You offer opinions where required and eye rolls where helpful? This chamber is filled with more intelligence, wit, and political subtlety than any courtier could handle. That's the secret the historians don't always write down. Some argue over how much power royal women really had in Mughal politics. Others insist the Zenana was simply decorative. The truth, as usual, lies somewhere between peacock feathers and chessboards. One of your younger sisters reads aloud from a Persian love story. Everyone swoons at the same predictable line about moonlight on armor. You pretend to gag. They throw jasmine petals at you. Eventually, the sherbet is replaced with tea. A silver tray of cardamom biscuits appears. You eat 2, possibly 3. Who's counting? The sun slants low in the sky now. The palace begins to exhale, that lazy golden breath that means the afternoon is almost done. You rise and give your farewells. The women bow slightly, amused and mildly relieved to return to their own rhythm. You leave the courtyard and head toward the terrace. Evening is arriving in style. You reach the Yaroka, a latticed balcony that overlooks the palace gardens, and beyond them, the sprawling city below. This is where you'll hold the public Yaroka Darshan, or appearance. It's symbolic, sure, but it matters. Every evening, people gather in the courtyard below, hoping for a glimpse. Merchants, pilgrims, travelers, and local nobles. It's a strange, temporary family of curious humans, craning their necks upward. You step out onto the balcony just as the sky turns to honey and flame. The call to prayer drifts on the breeze. The crowd hushes. You raise your hand in a calm, open gesture. They cheer. It's not wild or rowdy, just a swell of approval, soft and warm like a blessing. You don't speak. You don't need to. Your presence is enough. You stay there for a few minutes, letting the moment settle. Below, a child hoists her baby brother to see you. A trader whispers a quick wish. Someone tosses rose petals. A hawk wheels overhead. For this one breath of time, you are a living statue, both man and myth, framed in gold against the evening sky. Then you step back. Another tiny ritual, complete. As the sun dips below the palace walls, torches are lit in the inner courtyards. Their flickering orange glows cast long, playful shadows on the stone. It's time for the next course of action. Evening study. Yes, even emperors have homework. You make your way to the library. Not just any room with books, but a fragrant, cushion-strewn, sandalwood-paneled paradise where calligraphers glide like ghosts and books are bound in velvet. You sit near a low brass lamp and gesture to your favorite scholar. He's old, smells vaguely of ink, and has the voice of a bored owl. Perfect. Tonight's reading, A Treatise on Astronomy. You're trying to understand how the stars might affect the monsoon. Your court astrologer says the stars are moody. You suspect he's moody. Either way, it's best to be prepared. As the scholar drones gently, you drift in and out of focus. The diagrams are pretty, at least. Circles within circles. Moons chasing suns like celestial gossip. You doodle a tiny elephant in the margin. Nobody notices. Then a change of subject. You pull out a portfolio of miniature paintings. These are the latest works from your royal atelier. Scenes of court life, battles, mythical creatures, and romantic gardens. You admire the detail. The way one artist has painted a single peacock feather with 43 strokes of a brush made from squirrel hair. One miniature catches your eye. It's a painting of you holding a lily, looking suspiciously wise. You smirk. It's flattering but inaccurate. You never hold lilies. They tickle your nose. You turn the page. Another shows the city at night, lit by lanterns, alive with motion even as the sky goes dark. You like this one. It feels true. The air has cooled. Somewhere, a servant strikes a small brass gong. Dinner time approaches. Dinner in a Mughal palace isn't a quick affair. No snacks on the go, no secret midnight ramen. It's an orchestration of flavors, fabrics, and very careful hand washing. You leave the library with your thoughts half tethered to astronomy and elephant doodles and make your way through the lantern-lit corridors that now hum with the soft shuffling of slippers and the rustle of silks. The scent reaches you before the doorway does. Spiced rice, roasted meats, ghee-warmed bread, a whisper of saffron so powerful it might as well be a royal decree. You inhale. You almost float. The main dining hall, or dasturkhan, is already set. Not with chairs and forks, perish the thought, but with long carpets, low cushions, and broad platters laid out across white muslin cloths. You take your place at the head, cross-legged, ringed by your closest companions, advisors, and select royal family members. A servant pours warm water over your hands, catching it in a hammered copper basin. Another offers a strip of perfumed cloth for drying. It smells like roses with a hint of clove, functional and fancy. The food arrives in waves. A giant silver tray lands in the center with roasted quail stuffed with dried fruit and nuts, ringed with turmeric-dusted onions and slivers of preserved lemon. Someone has garnished the edge with pomegranate seeds because apparently everything is art now. Then comes saffron rice flecked with pistachio, little bowls of tamarind chutney, yogurt cooled with mint, lentils thick with ghee, fried breads puffed like small pillows, and a lamb curry so tender you could cut it with a sideways glance. You eat with your right hand, expertly scooping a morsel of rice and curry with a bit of warm naan. The flavors are bold, but balanced, spicy without being aggressive, like an advisor who tells the truth gently. You compliment the head cook. He blushes and mumbles something about using fewer cloves this time. You remind him you like the cloves. He beams like a kid with a gold star. As you chew and sip from a silver cup of lightly sweetened rosewater, conversation flows lazily. Someone recounts a hawking expedition gone awry when the bird flew off and refused to come back for 3 hours. Another jokes about the astrologer's most recent prediction, that a comet will appear next week. Again, someone mutters. The last one turned out to be a speck on the telescope lens. Your youngest son asks whether dragons could exist if they lived in volcanoes. You say, possibly, which keeps him happy and the philosophers fidgeting. One of your generals suggests adding pumpkin to the royal menu. You pause. You ask if the pumpkin asked for this. He laughs nervously. The answer is still no. Historians still argue whether these dinners were more about politics or pleasure. The truth? Equal parts both, seasoned with the joy of watching your cousin try to discreetly hide a second helping of mango pickle. After the main course, a servant clears the dishes with ballet-like grace. The next course isn't food, but scent. Someone wafts a small burner of agarwood smoke past the group, trailing a ribbon of earthy sweetness. A silver tray of bottle leaves appears, folded and filled with a blend of areca nut, cardamom, and lime paste. It's the Mughal version of an after-dinner mint, with more history and less sugar. As you chew, you walk slowly into the palace gardens again, this time under full nightfall. The stars are bold tonight, scattered across the sky like loose diamonds on velvet. You stroll barefoot on the cool marble pathways. The grass hums gently under the breeze, and the air is thick with night-blooming jasmine. A court poet catches up to you, eager to share a new couplet. "It's about the moon," he says. Of course it is. He recites something tender about longing and water lilies. You nod thoughtfully and say it's subtly evocative. He practically levitates with joy. The power of vague compliments. Back inside, it's time for one final affair. The private audience. Unlike the daytime durbars, this one is truly intimate. Just you and a few trusted officials, perhaps a visiting ambassador or a traveler with news from the frontier. Tonight, it's a merchant from Samarkand. He brings silk samples and tales of new dyes, one that can create a true sky blue without fading. You examine the cloth. It shimmers faintly like moonlight in motion. You tell him to leave samples with the weavers and accept your gift of a carved agate ring. Then, a report from the border. Minor unrest, nothing urgent, but worth monitoring. You make a mental note to dispatch a letter in the morning, then promptly forget it. Thankfully, your scribes are terrifyingly competent. The meeting winds down. You feel it in your bones, the pleasant ache of a day well lived. You rise, bow politely, and disappear through a curtained hallway into your private chambers. Here, the pace finally slows. Your chamber is quiet and dim, with a soft golden glow cast by a cluster of oil lamps. The bed is low, wide, and covered in clean linen, scented faintly with vetiver. A carved sandalwood box sits nearby, filled with tonight's reading options. Some devotional poetry, a humorous travelogue from Persia, and one suspiciously well-thumbed book of ancient riddles. But first, your bedtime routine. A servant brings a warm towel, another bowl of rose water, and a small dish of ground sandalwood paste. You rub a bit onto your wrists and temples. It cools immediately, pulling the heat of the day out of your skin. Next comes a vial of specially blended oil, spikenard, saffron, and myrrh. You massage a few drops into your temples while humming a song your grandmother used to sing. Nobody hears. That's the point. One final thing. A tiny carved box of opium mixed with honey and crushed poppy seeds. Just a smidge. Enough to take the edge off and smooth the rough corners of sleep. You're not alone. Historians agree many royals used it for relaxation, pain, and yes, just to make the night softer. You recline against the bolster, pick up the poetry book, and read aloud in a whisper. The words are gentle, the rhythm hypnotic. Eventually the book slips from your hand. Your eyes flutter. The lamps are extinguished one by one. The palace sleeps. But of course, you're not quite done. Even when your eyes have closed and your breathing slows, your world keeps moving. The Mughal Empire doesn't switch off like a lantern. Instead, it hums quietly, its gears oiled with protocol, candles, and human insomnia. A chamberlain waits just beyond your quarters, in case an urgent message arrives from the outer provinces. Say, a rebellion flaring up in Gujarat, or suspiciously late monsoon causing famine fears. And yes, this has happened before. A sleepy emperor doesn't mean a sleeping empire. But for now, things are quiet. You dream of rivers and tigers, and oddly a conversation with a singing mango. Blame the opium, it always sends you somewhere odd. Outside your window, the guards rotate watch with a sleepy sort of discipline. They wear quilted armor to ward off the chill and mutter jokes in hushed voices. Stories of ghosts in the eastern wing, or that one time a cow wandered into the treasury. One of them is plucking a four-stringed dotara. Badly. A gust of wind whistles through the archways. Somewhere a torch guttered out. The scent of sandalwood smoke lingers, tracing the ceiling beams like a memory. The palace birds roost silently under the eaves. White peacocks, blue parrots, and one extremely grumpy owl that everyone has agreed not to name for superstitious reasons. You think it looks like your grandfather. It's around this time, long past midnight, that your astrologers do their best thinking. They sit hunched over their instruments in a room that smells like wax and ink. casting shadows across brass armillary spheres and vellum charts. They whisper about planetary alignments, cross-checking star positions for the next imperial calendar. Should we adjust for that eclipse next month? One murmurs. Historians still argue whether he believed in omens or used them as excuses, another replies. They agree on nothing, except that you'll want to report by sunrise. Of course you will. Meanwhile, in the harem quarters, your wives and concubines each settle into their own corners of night. Contrary to popular imagination, it's not a never-ending party of silk pillows and wine. Mostly it's gossip and embroidery. Tonight, a few of them play a game like chess, but with tiny carved elephants. Others work on a collaborative poem. Each person adds a line, and you lose points if it doesn't rhyme with moon. Your favorite wife, the one who always smells faintly of almonds and knows 5 languages, is reading aloud by candlelight. It's a Persian romance about a prince who disguises himself as a gardener. You tried reading it once, but got bored halfway through and added a tiger to the plot, just to spice things up. She still keeps your version in a separate drawer. Elsewhere, the palace kitchens are being scrubbed clean. The giant copper pots that fed hundreds are now scoured by candlelight. A young cook's apprentice has fallen asleep inside one of them. It's fine. He's very small. The master cook shakes his head, covers the boy with a towel, and carries on chopping turmeric root for tomorrow's breakfast curry. That's what a good emperor eats, something that stains your fingers for a week. Far below in the stables, your war elephants sleep standing up, swaying slightly like slow boats in calm water. One of them lets out a low, sonorous trumpet. Maybe a dream of battle, or maybe he just has gas. The mahouts whisper lullabies to them, seated beside with oil lamps and beads in hand. You once tried riding an elephant at night. It was majestic until it sneezed and you had to change outfits. Twice. In the women's music quarters, a court musician strums the final notes of a vina. She thinks no one is listening. She's wrong. A poetry scribe in an adjacent chamber has been writing verses based on her melodies for weeks. He hopes to present them to you next month. Or maybe never. It depends on how the rhymes turn out. And even the palace cats are working. One is currently stalking a mouse that may or may not be imaginary. The mouse seems suspiciously composed. Historians might argue one day whether it was ever really there. Your eunuchs, tasked with watching the inner sanctums of the palace, exchange a hand of cards by lantern light. One of them has a secret stash of dried apricots. Another keeps carving spoons when he's bored. There are, by your last count, 42 spoons hidden across the palace walls. And in your own chamber, though your body is heavy with sleep, your mind stirs. Because even in rest, the emperor listens. You hear the wind. You feel the marble cool beneath your mattress. You sense the time bending quietly toward dawn. You wonder briefly, will the comet appear this week? Will the new ambassador from the Deccan bring mangoes or war? Should you commission a new map of your empire, one that includes all the secret rivers that only appear in dreams? And just before your mind floats back into unconsciousness, a final image. Your empire stretched wide, breathing like a great sleeping animal, dreaming with you, beneath you, and perhaps even beyond you. You let go. Your breath rises and falls, steady now, the long night cradling you like one of those elaborate Mughal hammocks made of embroidered silk, and far too many tassels. But just as your dreams deepen, so does the machinery of morning. The palace does not rise all at once. It murmurs. Somewhere near the eastern veranda, the first temple bell tinkles, soft and distant. A priest is lighting the first ghee lamp, offering prayers to the still sleeping dawn. You don't hear it directly, not yet, but your mind stirs, like someone knocking gently at the inside of your skull. By the time the sky turns the color of cool dash, the inner palace has begun its staggered routine. Attendants are yawning into their palms. Silk slippers shuffle across mosaic floors. Curtains are drawn back with a practiced flourish. The Emperor is about to wake. Except, of course, you're still wrapped in sleep like a paratha in a napkin. Outside your quarters, your personal attendants whisper about the schedule. They check the water temperature in your copper bath basin. They adjust the small brass incense holder shaped like a lotus. Someone arranges your robe, the pale teal one, embroidered with crane feathers and tiny gold moons. You don't know why, but it feels like a crane robe kind of day. Meanwhile, a palace astronomer appears in the corridor, holding a scroll marked with ink and sandalwood dust. He looks like he hasn't slept. Technically, he hasn't. The stars say to avoid mangoes, he whispers to your valet. Your valet nods solemnly. Understood. Pears it is. Historians still argue whether Mughal emperors actually followed astrological guidance, or if they simply used it as a polite excuse to reschedule meetings. As your bath is being readied, a chorus of maids arrives carrying silver trays of perfumes and oils. Some are distilled from roses, others from cardamom and clove. One especially odd-smelling vial comes from crushed beetles. It's a fan favorite. They murmur among themselves about the pigeons outside laying eggs again. That makes 3 nests this month. One of them jokes that even the birds want to live under your reign. Finally, the first call is given. Awaken the Padshah. It echoes through the walls like a warm ripple in stone. You blink awake. Barely. The ceiling above you, painted with constellations and soft blues, greets you like an old friend. A breeze from the courtyard carries in the scent of ripe oranges and wet stone. For a moment, you consider rolling over. After all, you are the Emperor. Technically, you could declare today a horizontal audience day. But you don't. You sit up, slowly. Your spine sounds like a string of pebbles tumbling down a staircase. That's normal. You've been sleeping on that inlaid wooden headrest again, haven't you? Your attendants move like clockwork, offering towels warmed near the lamp. One of them hands you a slice of dried fig, as tradition dictates. Another whispers the day's royal motto into your ear, a different phrase every morning. Today's is, even a lake must ripple. You have no idea what it means, but you nod gravely. Your morning ablutions begin. The bathwater is infused with saffron, orange blossom, and a drop of camphor. You wince slightly as you step in, because yes, even emperors have cold toes, but it's heavenly once you settle in. Someone scrubs your back with a cloth that smells like your childhood tutor's lap. That's oddly comforting and slightly worrying. You say nothing. As you soak, a servant reads aloud from the daily bulletins. Updates from distant forts, tax reports, a poem submitted by a local noble's daughter. It's aggressively about peacocks. And a complaint from a potter in Lahore about a missing chicken. Standard stuff. You hum vaguely in response. Your breakfast tray is prepared and carried to your divan. It includes pomegranate seeds arranged in the shape of a sun, cardamom pastries, a soft lentil pancake, and, despite the astrologer's warning, one perfectly sliced mango. You stare at it. You eat it. Historians still debate whether this act was political defiance, pure habit, or mango-based hubris. With breakfast finished, you're dried, dressed, perfumed, and very gently swatted with a peacock feather fan, just because it's there. The dressing process takes half an hour and 3 opinions. Your outer robe today is russet with a saffron sash, embroidered with patterns that look like waves but are actually stylized jackfruit. You make a mental note to tell the artist that you noticed. They'll be thrilled. Your sword is fastened to your hip, not because you'll use it, but because it completes the look. At last, the mirror is held up. You see yourself. Eyes still heavy from sleep. Hair wrapped in a turban that cost someone in Bukhara 6 weeks of labor. And that faint little crease between your brows that says, "Yes, I am awake." Barely. But do proceed. You rise. Behind you, the world is catching up. Courtiers begin to gather. Musicians softly tune their instruments in the outer chamber. Petitions arrive tied with colored strings. Green for military, blue for taxes, gold for other. There are always too many others. Today's first audience will begin soon, but for one quiet moment, you pause. You breathe in. You breathe out. The Empire awaits, but it will have to wait one breath longer. You step forward into the day, the weight of the Empire settling across your shoulders like one of those ceremonial elephant blankets. Beautiful, embroidered, and frankly excessive. The Diwan-i-Khaz, your private audience chamber, gleams in the pale light of early morning. Pillars of white marble veined with gray rise around you like ancient trees, their bases carved with curling vines and blossoms. The ceiling is a riot of painted gold suns and turquoise stars, though you're not quite alert enough to appreciate it. You blink a few times and try not to yawn in front of the court poet. Your first petitioner is a nobleman from Kashmir who's been rehearsing his bow for 2 weeks. He performs it flawlessly, only to forget his entire speech. You wait patiently. It comes back to him eventually, something about irrigation canals, taxation reforms, and his second cousin's misbehaving parrot. You nod, issue a decision, and wave him away. The court scribes jot everything down furiously. One writes in Persian, one in Hindavi, and one in that neat, tiny Urdu script that always gives you a headache. The next visitor is an old woman with calloused hands and a sun-wrinkled face. She presents a torn shawl and a story about a greedy landlord. She's nervous. You soften your voice, ask a few careful questions, and before she leaves, you make sure someone slips her enough coins to replace her roof. Historians still argue whether these moments were political theater or genuine empathy. You know what you felt, though. That's enough. Somewhere behind you, a court musician begins playing a soft tune on the sitar. The melody trickles through the chamber like sunlight through silk curtains. It's calming, but also, admittedly, kind of sleep-inducing. You subtly flex your toes in your sandals to stay awake. A servant offers you a small clay cup of sweet almond milk laced with saffron. It tastes like childhood naps and minor festival days. You sip slowly, pretending you're deep in thought about the next military campaign, when you're really just trying to remember where you left your ink-stained slipper last night. Another guest appears, a foreign envoy from the Deccan, bearing embroidered saddles and 3 parrots that recite poetry in Sanskrit. One says, "Oh moon, you shame the sky," over and over. You're impressed, also slightly unnerved. The bird stares too long. The envoy requests trade privileges and permission to build a fortified outpost. You nod, counteroffer, and schedule further talks after lunch. The parrots squawk in approval, or protest, it's hard to tell. Outside the chamber, the sun is climbing. The palace begins to shimmer faintly, heat curling off sandstone walls. Someone has draped wet cloths across the latticed windows to cool the incoming air. It smells like lime and marigold. At precisely midday, you rise and stretch, imperially, of course. Lunch is served in a shaded pavilion, with birds chirping overhead and servants fanning away both flies and sycophants. The meal is quiet, a private reprieve. There are bowls of lentils spiced with cloves, flatbreads warm from the clay tandoor, roasted eggplants, and tiny stuffed gourds. You pick at your food while watching the palace falcons wheel lazily in the distance. They dive, vanish, reappear. Your ministers murmur nearby, but no one disturbs you yet. You let the moment stretch. Later, back in your study, scrolls await, thick with seals and ribbons. They smell like dust and diplomacy. Some deal with far-flung governors in Bengal, others with complaints about merchant guilds in the Punjab. One scroll includes a painting of a monkey accused of stealing an official's turban. You set it aside. That one deserves special attention. You read, think, dictate, and pause often. Your dog dozes on a cushion near your feet, tail twitching. Occasionally you toss him a fig. He does not care for figs, but he eats them anyway. Loyalty is like that. In the late afternoon, you step outside. The garden glows in amber light, shadows long and soft. You walk slowly along the tiled paths, past fountains that trickle like whispers and jasmine, blooming thick along the walls. The scent is intoxicating. You breathe deep, grateful. One of your favorite courtiers joins you, bringing news of a comet seen in the northern sky. A few astrologers panic. Others say it's a blessing. Historians still debate whether Mughal emperors feared omens or manipulated them for political advantage. You squint at the horizon. The sky seems calm enough. Evening prayers begin. The palace hushes for a while. Lanterns are lit. The sound of soft sandals on stone fills the quiet like a lullaby. As twilight spreads, you return indoors. The walls seem to soften in the dim light. The mood changes. Dinner is ceremonial but gentle. You eat only a little, some spiced rice, a bit of lamb, a small orange. There's music again. A woman sings in a voice as thin and golden as a strand of silk. You close your eyes just for a second. Afterward, you retire to your private chamber. You change into night robes, pale indigo stitched with silver stars. You sit on the edge of your bed, reading one last scroll by lamplight. It's from your youngest son, written in awkward but proud Persian. He's caught a fish. You smile. You dictate a reply. Your scribes will embellish it for clarity. The lamp flickers. Your servants draw the curtains, sprinkle rosewater across the floor, and bow deeply before leaving. Finally, you lie back. The pillow is cool. The ceiling above is quiet. The empire can wait until morning. And as the stars emerge just outside the wide Hiroka, you drift into sleep once more. Word count: 1,084. Wind down: 300 words. The night deepens around you, folding gently over the palace like a velvet shroud stitched with stars. The sounds of the court fade until there's only a hush, the soft tick of distant fountains and the rustle of leaves in the royal garden. You lie still, wrapped in the calm after a long, elegant day. Everything is slowed now. Each breath, each thought, each remembered moment of silks, spices, and soft moonlight. The tapestries hang quietly, the lamps burn low. The empire hums onward, but without urgency. You feel the softness of the cushions beneath you, the scent of rose and sandalwood in the air, and the warm presence of calm all around. In the distance, a flute plays a single drifting note. It lingers, then vanishes like mist at dawn. Even the stars outside the window seem to move more slowly now, as if they too are ready to sleep. Let your limbs grow heavy. Let your thoughts loosen like petals on water. There's nothing else you need to do. No decisions, no court, no scrolls, no parrots reciting love poems. Only this moment, only this breath. Tomorrow the empire will rise again, but tonight it sleeps with you. You are still. You are safe. You are home.